Chapter 6. Serious about whisky. Finn's eyes balked as he returned to the outside seating area when he found this mysterious Hugh guy not only surrounded by multiple glasses of aged whisky and jello shots, but also by a hefty stack of banknotes and coins. There were even a few ancient gold sovereigns on the table, each probably worth hundreds to a coin collector. "This guy really takes his period costume and act seriously," Finn remarked under his breath. "Who the fuck is this guy? Seriously?" By this time, Finn had gotten bored of the whole event. Hugh clearly had as well, judging by the insane amount of alcohol he'd procured from somewhere. He hoped Hugh wasn't some fraudster, but realised that the rowing scene was full of eccentric people. He was just a little tipsy and merry and possibly wanted to sleep with him too. It would explain the enormous amount of alcohol which currently adorned the rather small glass-topped table. "So, where do you live?" Finn asked. He was interested, but not invested in this guy. He'd piqued his interest, especially at having bought around £100 worth of whisky and shots for absolutely no reason. "Ah, thought you'd remember. Kew, so. Up in Kew by the river, near the bridge, on the Surrey side." Instantly, this made Finn realise he must be wealthy. To be able to afford a cottage or house in Kew Village or anywhere close to Kew Bridge on the Surrey side meant he was loaded. It explained why he had strewn Victorian coins all over the table. Perhaps he was having some kind of breakdown or neurotic episode. Finn decided to embrace the whole thing as some harmless whim of a crazed Irishman who was possibly acting out some part for a movie he was due to star in, or perhaps had serious mental problems. Either way, Finn didn't mind. "Nice. Love Kew. Such a nice area," Finn responded, noting Hugh wincing slightly at hearing the words nice and Kew in the same sentence. Most people would do anything to pay whatever they could to live in Kew Village or next to the river. Still, he looked cute in the current moment, and he'd finally removed the outer layer of his boiler room outfit. It revealed a very taut, muscular upper body with veiny arms. Finn went weak at the knees. "I've missed you, Finnegan," Hugh said, looking at him fiercely in the eyes. This got Finn instantly hard, or semi-hard. There was a certain masculinity to this guy that was wholly aided and abetted by the strong 10-year-old single malt whisky. "It's nice to see you again," he said, with uncertainty, not wanting to let this guy down. He clearly had his eyes set on Finn. Ali was in Paris, so... No, he couldn't think that way. That was very naughty. They continued talking about Finn's everyday life, and although there was some sort of language or cultural barrier, perhaps due to him staying true to his Halloween act, Finn enjoyed the conversation. It was refreshing. He was on his 6th whiskey and was getting horny. He asked Hugh a question he wouldn't typically ask. "Want to ditch the party and come back to my place? I've got some nice whiskey set aside. You're welcome to join me." Hugh seemed shocked at this, but also as if he had expected it. There was a serene calmness to his response, which didn't come across as desperate. This was reassuring, as it meant that Hugh was genuinely a nice person and possibly didn't want to sleep with him. Either way, Finn wouldn't have minded. By now, Finn had realised who he was. He'd seen a photograph of someone on the wall in an ancient rowing outfit, probably from the 1900s or sometime around then. It was a photo of a very masculine guy with strawberry blonde hair and piercing blue-grey eyes. The gentleman in the photograph must have been around 25 or so, young-looking, and was posing outside their rowing club holding a sculling oar of the old kind with the thin, narrow blade. It looked different, but not entirely dissimilar to how the club looked now. He decided that Hugh must be an ancestor of some famous rower. He obviously had a family connection to the rowing club. He was trustworthy, after all. How they'd safely arrived back at his flat in Fulham, he wasn't exactly sure. The entire time he had had to deal with Hugh, who was drunk and seemed slightly bewildered. Perhaps he'd popped a pill or something. This was London after all, and anything could happen on a night out. Though Hugh was either still in character, and therefore a brilliant actor, or high on some unknown concoction, Finn didn't really care that much. He'd become used to explaining everyday things to him by now, such as how people were scantily dressed. They're dressed like the devil's hookers, God help them. Or other nuggets, such as, why is there a lady trapped inside the car directing us? She can shut the fuck up too. He took this as some hilarious intellectual game which was only funny to Hugh and had secret rules which he pretended to know. They were both sitting on the sofa while Finn busied himself pouring out 2 more badly measured shots of whisky. He'd managed to calm Hugh down by this point and had learnt to avoid showing him any technology post-1920 and trying to change how he spoke or what terminology he used. In other words, the situation at his flat probably sounded like a Thomas Hardy novel set in 19th century England to an outsider, had they been listening in on them. You're very handsome. You know that, right? Finn stated, half drunk, but still sincere enough to know exactly where this was going. Got a boyfriend? Hugh chugged his shot back, throwing his neck back. This showed off his incredibly sharp jawline and muscular throat. Finn nudged a little closer without him noticing. Better sorry than safe, he thought. I've got a lot of boyfriends, as it were. Well, I did anyway. A lot of lads at the rowing clubs. We used to have such fun, he answered, wistfully, noting how he placed his hand on Finn's thigh. Taken aback slightly but not surprised, or perhaps surprised that he may have been still staying in character for Halloween, he answered. You look like you have a lot of attention, so I can see why. Tell me about them. The boys, I mean. Thought you'd be jealous at hearing this information, dear Finnegan. He gently moved his hand up towards Finn's crotch. Not entirely sure what to do, Finn reached in to kiss him, perhaps to stop him making a further advance. Hugh was firm, but knew exactly where to go. He was also terribly eager, meaning Finn could tell exactly where his cock was probably going to end up. The chances of him having some sort of 1900s version of condoms was extremely low, but by now he wouldn't have been surprised after the number of weird historical items Hugh had kept pulling out of his pockets from seemingly nowhere. He went down on Finn and started sucking his cock as soon as he'd freed it from its shackles of his wool trousers. He sucked and licked Finn's 6-inch uncut cock with a fierce eagerness for a minute or so, gently cupping his full balls in his left hand as his right grasped it firmly. Then he stopped and fumbled around with both their belts and managed to take both of their trousers off after a struggle. It wasn't awkward as Finn busied himself by removing his shirt, then proceeding to take off Hugh's shirt. Hugh then kissed Finn again for a second time, only longer. Both of their hands were searching for each other's muscles and cocks. Then, not knowing how to stop this or what to do, Finn said, "Let's go to the bedroom. It's warmer. Easier." Hugh didn't respond. He was in his underwear by this point, which Finn almost laughed out loud at due to their length and style, but decided just to rip them off him instead. Laughing would have killed the mood, although Hugh seemed to be on some sort of mission which had to be accomplished with immediacy and efficiency. He was fully naked, stood with taut muscles and a slight shimmer all over his body, in part due to his struggle getting out of his clothing, but also due to the heat in the flat. Finn had turned the temperature up upon entering his flat earlier. It was a sneaky tactic that clearly paid off. His body was covered in sweat, slightly warm to the touch. Finn was standing opposite him in tight briefs. Hugh seemed to enjoy the feel of the underwear, which was some hybrid bamboo material. He was rock hard under the briefs, and then led Hugh by the hand to bed. Hugh pushed Finn onto the bed with a ferocity that surprised and turned him on. He then grabbed Finn's white briefs and ripped them off, tearing them slightly as he did so. He was rabid. He was wild, but Finn liked it. He stayed face down in the bed as Hugh's body covered his entirely, with both arms either side of Finn's shoulders to hold himself up. He felt Hugh's hard cock brush against his left arse cheek as his lips kissed his neck gently. They were rough, but the feeling was amazing against his skin, making the feeling of the pre-cum from his hard cock even more sensuous. The feeling of both at the same time got him too hard and horny, so he arched his legs slightly and put his right hand on his cock and started wanking awkwardly under the weight of them both. He arched his back more, with his arse in the air. Then he noticed Hugh's lips leave his neck and slowly down his upper and then lower back. Down they went, until Hugh reached his arse cheeks and spat 3 times firmly, right onto his arsehole. Hugh knew exactly what to do as Finn arched his back some more. It was fucking tight. It was huge. Hugh must have been around 8 inches or more when fully hard. He had no clue what was making him so eager, but it clearly worked. He could feel Hugh's spit still lubricating his arse as he wanked his cock, trying to also realign his body with Hugh's as he pressed the full weight of his muscular body against Finn's sweaty body. Finn turned his head around to kiss Hugh, which Hugh immediately took as a sign to come closer, press his body and large cock deeper inside Finn, and to make out. It was slightly difficult to maintain that same position, but the feeling of his tongue and Hugh's lips against him whilst he was 8 inches inside him, fully raw, was too much to handle. After around 10 minutes, fucking like this, Hugh finally came. It was a huge shot, landing deep inside him. He could feel every inch of him inside him as he pressed even closer, and was fairly certain he had managed to push the top of his balls inside his arse as well. The feeling was insanely good, and made him come almost instantly, all over the bed. Hugh collected this with his hands and played with Finn's cock as he fed it into Finn's mouth. Finally, after his last breath, Hugh sunk into the bed beside Finn. They made out using the cum on his hands and didn't stop for a good 10 minutes. Finn was in an incredibly blissful place at that second. This sentiment, however, was quickly interrupted by the buzz of his phone. It was Ali. Although Ali was over 500 kilometers away, the guilt struck him and hit immensely hard. Traitor. He was a traitor. What had he done? He closed his eyes, not remembering much after this. He saw Hugh briefly in his eyes, who fell asleep at the same time. It didn't feel like a forced sleep, but the guilt was still ringing in his ears, and he could hear Ali's voice calling for him. The guilt and the shame was too much to bear. Then, he fell asleep into a blissful but chaotic dream.